I'm going to be laughing on Election Day. I'm going to be laughing. Me and Curtis Ellis, we're going to be somewhere. And we're going to be laughing all night because the Republicans are going to hold on to the House by a hair. They're going to gain like 6 seats in the Senate. All these, they're all going down. They're all going down. Air Claire, history. Tester, forget it, gone. Joe Donnelly, see you later. Joe Manchin, I don't think so. Who else is out there? Heidi Heitkamp, zero chance of getting reelected. And Scott is going to win Florida. Rick Scott is going to beat Bill Nelson in Florida. I think the Republicans are going to gain like 6 seats in the Senate. And we're going to be laughing so hard. I don't know what the Democrats are going to do. That they want no borders, no nation, no deportation. They basically want to erase the country. That's the platform they're running on. Let's get rid of the country. No country. No borders, no country. Let everybody in. You know, we don't want terror. I don't know what they want. They don't want a country. That's their platform. And by the way, and along with that, let's get rid of the Trump tax cut and get your money back to the government and get it out of your pocket. That's the platform. I don't know what their platform is. Their platform is, we don't want an America. I mean, that's basically what they're running on. It's incredible. Remember those old Wide World of, I grew up, it was like ABC, right? They had Wide World of Sports. And they would say, you know, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. I mean, the Democratic plan right now is how to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, all they had to do, if they all went on vacation, they win. If they just all went to Hawaii for 90 days, they win. But they can't help themselves. They can't get out of their own way. And now they want no borders, no country, no deportation, no anything. Just come in, come one, come all. And now you've got the deputy DNC chairman, Keith Ellison of Minnesota, calling for national health care as part of their platform. So no borders, no country, no checking, no deportation, no ICE. And if you come in, you get national health care. How they're going to pay for all this, no one has any idea. Plus, along with that, take away your tax cut. That's their platform. Boy, if there was ever a winning formula, that's it. It's too much. Joining us now to break all this stuff. Hey, last night for me, remember as a kid, Christmas Eve, you'd be excited. And then Christmas Day, you'd go down and see all the presents, right? You'd be all excited under the tree. Last night for me was like Christmas Eve when I was a kid, because $35 billion of tariffs just went on the Chi-Coms. It's like waking up to Christmas. I am in such a good mood today. I never thought I would see this in my lifetime. I'm a protectionist, so I'm excited about it, and it's going to be great. But, of course, the Chi-Coms say they're going to retaliate, and they've got another $35 billion in tariffs. Okay, well, we have a $500 billion, $570 billion annual trade deficit with the Chinese communist dictator government, which means they get $570 billion more of our money than we get of theirs. $570 billion. So they're going to have to jeopardize that by raising the ante. I mean, we're giving them almost $600 billion in our money annually. And so this is a battle they can't possibly win. They need our consumers. We don't need their consumers. If the trade deficit was in our favor, it would be a different story. It's the other way around. The president cannot possibly lose this endeavor. He has to win, because it's a mathematical certainty. If you believe in math, he has to win. This is a great day, and that rally in Montana was just so funny. Joining me now to break all this down, Curtis Ellis. He's with America First Policies. He's a senior advisor there. He's also chairman emeritus of the American Jobs Alliance, of which I am the executive director. So technically, with the American Jobs Alliance, Curtis is my boss. So I should say, hey, boss, how you doing?
Oh, great. Great, my little employee. How are you doing?
It's good to have you with us. Am I doing a good job? You're not going to fire me, are you?
No, you're doing a great job.
Right,
look, we got more jobs than were expected. The jobs report just came out. Jobs are up. Wages are up. You're doing a heck of a job there,
I know.
Johnny.
Aren't I, as the executive director of the American Jobs Alliance, right? Jobs are up. Another 224,000 jobs added again in this economy in June. So that's great. And it continues to percolate along. So let's get to, we got a lot of issues here, Curtis. But we got to get to trade. But first, What do you think about the Democrats' policy here, which is basically no borders, no country? I don't know. What do they want?
They want to give our country away. They want to give America away. They have no idea how wealth is created, so they think they can just give it away. I love Keith Ellison's plan here. Now, just think about this, folks, for a minute. He wants free health care for everyone.
Right.
And then you combine that with the other part of the Democratic platform, which is no borders. So let's put up a sign and tell all of the, however many billions of people there are on Earth, what is it now?
8 billion.
8 billion. 8 billion. I'm sure they're keeping a very accurate count in Bangladesh, but yeah, 8 billion at least. We don't even know how many illegal aliens are in this country, and we've got pretty good computers in America. So I don't know how they're counting them over there in, Burma or something. But so let's tell all 8 billion people, if you are sick or you're not feeling well or you're worried about your kid not having good health, don't worry. Come to America.
Yeah.
You get free hospitals, free doctors, free everything.
And a phone.
So.
And an Obama phone.
And an Obama phone, right. So you can call the doctor. Yeah, and make an appointment. And just show up and sit in the clinic and until the doctor sees you. How's that going to work?
That's going to work great.
I don't think I need a crystal ball to figure out how that's going to work out in the end. I mean, it's just ridiculous. This and the trade business is part of it. Look, the way we've been screwed with trade deals is part of the same open borders deal. The whole thing is erase the border, just let people and goods and everything just slosh around the world like sewage in a bucket. Just let it keep going. There's no place called home. Everybody just goes wherever they're needed according to the slave masters. We need people to build roads in Africa. We'll ship them over and bring them over there. We need people to pick cotton in Alabama. We'll just bring them over there. Free trade was the rallying cry of the Confederate South. So there you go.
There you have it right there. Meantime, the Chi-Coms going, I don't think they thought the president would ever go through this. Remember, they sent their economic minister to the White House. He met with Steve Mnuchin from Goldman Sachs, Treasury Secretary, who said, I cut a deal. It's all good. They're going to buy another $200 billion of our goods sometime in the future. We don't know what, we don't know when, but probably 2050, something like that. But, there we got him at the table, and then Sean Hannity gets on TV and say, it's all over. Trump won. Not so fast, okay? So now the Chi-Coms are saying that, they're very upset by this, and that they said last night, that the president has started, quote, this coming from the Chinese government, the Chi-Coms, the biggest trade war in economic history. Now, the trade war that they claim that Trump started is basically Trump put a tank on the field after the U.S. getting annihilated by the Chinese for 30 years. I mean, that's basically what happened.
Yeah, exactly. I got an alert on my phone. I get alerts from the New York Times. I like to know what the enemy is reporting. And so my phone, ding, 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 breaking news from the New York Times. The trade war has officially begun. It's like, this is like saying World War II began on D-Day.
Listen.
No, our troops have finally shown up to fight. The trade war began a long time ago, folks. The New York Times, really, are they stupid or are they evil? Or both? I mean, they really know better. They should know better. If they don't, they are in the wrong business.
Well,
and
maybe
they should sell hot dogs on Coney Island.
We can say that. We can say they're Stevel. Look, they just want to bash Trump, it doesn't matter. But when the Chinese are saying you started a trade war and we have a $550 billion annual trade deficit, that's over $500 billion of our money going to the Chinese government, going into China on an annual basis, and they have all these tariffs and we don't have any. How are we starting a trade war when the tariffs that we put on are only a fraction of their tariffs?
Right.
I mean, that's the bottom line.
And you've got the idiot press. Half the idiot press in this country is buying into the Chinese communist propaganda.
Unbelievable.
That we started this trade war. That we started this. I say, go to Portsmouth, Ohio. Go to the suburbs of Philadelphia. You'll see what a trade war looks like. These people have been getting hammered for 30 years. Go to upstate New York.
Go to upstate
Buffalo.
New York.
You know what a trade war looks like. It didn't start today. It didn't even start yesterday.
Right.
It started 30 years ago. It's ridiculous. It's more than ridiculous. It's disgusting. We have been on the receiving end of deliberate policies of China and Japan and Germany and other countries to strip us of our jobs, of our industry, take advantage of the greatest consumer market on the face of the earth, and we had idiots in Washington who facilitated the theft of our jobs and our livelihoods. And it's that simple. And finally, we have somebody in Washington who's standing up for Americans. His name is President Donald J. Trump. And he said, enough already. And I love these idiots on in all the highbrow press saying, well, you know, President Trump is attacking the multilateral global institutions that were the core of the post-World War II international order, like the World Trade Organization. Well, first of all, the World Trade Organization came into existence in 1995. That was like about, 50 years after the end of World War II. So that cannot be the core of the post-war international order. And the G7 came into existence in 1975, right? Okay, so again, you're 30 years late for the war, folks. So forget about that part. It's factually incorrect. But the whole idea, the core of the post-World War II international order, folks, World War II ended 70 years ago. We're still operating. Our operating system is 70 years old. Mm-hmm. My computer's operating. My telephone's operating system is only 2 months old. Don't you think it's time to upgrade the operating system? I mean, come on, guys, wake up. Hello. The rest of the world is not smoldering ruin, bombed out ashes. The world has changed since the end of World War II. It's time to change some of these trade agreements and some of the operating premises of America's relation to the rest of the world. I mean, these people, it's like they learned this stuff in college when they graduated 20 years ago, and they haven't had an original thought since. And by the way, what they were taught in college, they were taught by professors who learned that 40 years before and hadn't had an original thought since. Finally, we have a guy in control in the White House named President Donald J. Trump, who doesn't rely on these no-think experts who are experts only in what they learned 50 years ago. We have a guy who thinks for himself. So, amen and hallelujah.
So, Curtis, why have both political parties been complicit here? Why have both the Republicans and the Democrats turned a blind eye to what you call the trade theft that's been going on, stealing from the American workers, stealing their jobs? Why have both parties for so long turned a blind eye to this?
Because the donors, the big dollar donors who finance these puppet politicians, are making a killing by sending our jobs to China. Look, Goldman Sachs, the Wall Street big shots, they don't give a darn about America. They don't care about this country. They just care about their bank accounts, which are probably in Switzerland or the Cayman Islands. And they can make more money by shafting the American worker, shafting the American citizen, and making this stuff with slave labor in China and then selling it into America. Now, look, they probably know, as well as everybody listening, which includes you, John. I hope you're listening because
yes.
I'm your boss. They know as well as anybody listening that you can't keep this up forever. If you take everybody's job away, in the long run, they're not going to have the money to buy the crap that's being made in China now, right?
Right.
But Doesn't matter. They're getting rich today. They'll be dead by the time the chickens come home to roost, and that's as far as they think. And they're paying the politicians in Washington to look the other way. And then you have these, and to say, oh, it's all good, free trade makes everybody happy, it's all wonderful. And then you've got these idiot academic think tank morons like the Peterson Institute for International Economics and all these other highbrow-sounding places, the Brookings Institution in Washington. They're all paid by the same people. And again, these are folks who they were taught when they went to Harvard and Princeton and Yale that free trade is good and this is helps everybody and there's no downside. Of course, the latest papers from non-bought and paid for economists tell us that that's not true, that everything we know, America's been destroyed. The American working class and middle class is being destroyed by these trade deals. But, you've got the no-think tanks backing up the ideology of the donors, of the donor class, who are getting rich by selling out America. I just want to, if we got 1 minute here, the history of free trade is very interesting. This was an invention of the British Empire in the 1850s. There was a guy named Richard Cobden. He was a manufacturer and a radical. He was part of the Radical Party. He was a manufacturer, and so he owned all these mills and industrial plants in Great Britain, and he needed workers and cheap food for the workers. At the time, Great Britain had a tariff on imported food, on wheat, whatever, corn. They call it corn, but it wasn't, it was more than corn. Because that way the farmers could make a living, right? Farmers could stay on the land and grow the food that was then fed to the people who worked in the mills. Well, Cobden, number one, needed workers for his mills, and he needed cheap food for the workers. So radical that he was, he agitated to change the laws to get rid of the protective tariff on food so he could get cheap food grown in other parts of the world, like America or anywhere else. And this, of course, would bankrupt the farmers. So then they could come and they needed a job. They could work for him. Hey. They no longer were, happy land-owning peasants. They now got a paycheck from Mr. Cobden. But, of course, Cobden wasn't honest about this. Or maybe he was fooling himself. And he couldn't just say, hey, what I want to do is I want to bankrupt the farmers, bring in cheap food from overseas, and, I'll make out like a, bandit here. No, he said he came up with the theory of free trade. He said, once we get rid of trade barriers, all the world will live in peace. Countries will be trading with each other, and there'll be no need for armies anymore. No need for national rivalries anymore. In fact, even nations will come to disappear. He said it. It's in the books. You can find it. I'm not making this up.
Talking about Cogsdale and his theory on free trade and how there be no wars, and that didn't quite work out, did it?
No, it didn't work out. No wars, no nations. That's what he finally predicted. He said, oh, man, if we have free trade and everything, trade with each other and sell each other and buy from each other without any barriers, any tariffs, or any protection, we're going to have universal peace. Universal peace, no more armies, no more wars, no more nations. That's what he said, no more nations. So he's right there. Democrats are right there with the program. Let's get rid of the nations. Let's get rid of the borders. And, let the boys on Wall Street just buy and sell and trade people and goods any way they want.
That's basically the bottom line.
His whole thing was cooked up in the British Empire over almost 200 years ago. So that's what we're dealing with, folks. And by the way, the British Empire, they were the biggest buyers of the slave cotton from the plantations down south. So this whole thing is a slave scheme. It's a slave scheme, I tell you.
It's a cheap slave labor scheme that's been going on for years, and both parties have, as you said, been complicit, looked the other way because it's all you just follow the money. That's all you have to do. Now, let's talk about retaliation. The communist government, the Chi-Coms, They retaliated with $30 billion of their own tariffs, and now everybody's up in arms saying, oh, this is going to cause prices in the U.S. to go up, and farmers are not going to be able to sell their beans, and they can't sell whiskey, and they can't sell...
That's more for us, John. More whiskey for us if they can't. If the Chinese ain't drinking it, maybe the price will go down at the corner bar. Who knows?
What impact is this going to have on the U.S. economy?
Well, according to the jobs report today, it didn't have any impact. We're still humming along here. Folks, get a grip. The Chinese are selling stuff to us. If they stop selling stuff to us, that means we get to sell stuff to us. We have the greatest market in the world. We can supply our own goods and services. We can make the stuff that we buy, and we can buy the stuff that we make. How about that?
It's a great idea.
That's the way it used to be before all this crackpot free trade nonsense took hold in the 1970s and the 1990s with Bill Clinton. We're going to build a bridge to the 21st century, and there'll be new, better jobs for everybody, and there'll be 1.5 billion Chinese customers for American goods. So just give me the money, and I will sell our country out to the World Trade Organization. Before all that crap came into effect, Americans were making the stuff that were on the shelves of American stores. So there you go. No, the Chinese have more to lose than we do. They've got to sell stuff to America in order to keep their people employed. So if they want to play this game, okay, bring it on.
I mean, it's a game they can't win because we have a $550 billion trade deficit with them. So they're selling to our consumers $550 more billion U.S. cash than we are selling to their market. So as they escalate this, how do they win? I mean, the math, if you believe in basic arithmetic, the Chinese can't win this battle.
No, they can't. And they know it. They're bluffing. Look, you go back, the Chinese have always been very good at bellicose rhetoric, right? They were Chairman Mao had the imperialists running dogs, and the streets will run red with the blood of the imperialists running dogs, and the paper tiger of American imperialism, and all this nonsense. And they were, at that time, the Chinese Red Army was conducting war games with sticks instead of rifles. That's changed. They now have a real army, and they're conducting war games in the South China Sea with electronic warfare jamming systems. And that's all thanks to the money we gave them when we go to Walmart and buy the junk that's made there in China. But they need our money. They need our money to conduct those war games, to build up their military, and to keep their people employed. They're not buying anything from us. They're stealing from us. They're stealing our technology, stealing our trade secrets. They're sending their students over here to our elite universities, where they then conduct research for the Department of Defense, unbelievably, and then send the information back to Beijing. But no, they have more to lose than we do, and you just have to keep that in mind. And look, they say the farmers, oh my gosh, the farmers are going to lose because of the tariff on soybeans. The farmers understand better than most what it's like to be at the mercy of powerful economic interests lodged in faraway places. The farmers, a century ago, the farmers fought against the railroads for squeezing them, charging them a whole lot of money to ship their harvest to market on the railroads or shipping rates. They hated the bankers, the Wall Street bankers who used to foreclose on their farms when times were tough. They accused the politicians of being in the pocket of the Wall Street and the railroad barons, right? The politicians were all bought and paid for puppets. This is what the farmers were saying. about the powerful economic interests of the East Coast who controlled their fate and had them, were squeezing them. They know what the game is that Beijing is playing. They know the game that China's playing, and they are not going to let themselves be at the mercy of China the same way they didn't want to be at the mercy of Wall Street and the big grain traders and the big meat packers that used to manipulate the markets to drive down the price paid for a hog to the farmer that raised the hog and then squeeze the consumer and charge a high price for the ham. Mm-hmm. Right? They know how the game is played, and they don't want to be at the mercy of a faraway economic and political power, and that's what China is. So they're going to hang in there. They understand what's at stake here, their future, the future of America, America as an independent, sovereign nation in control of its own destiny, and the farmers in control of their own destiny.
Curtis, I got a question here from Amy in Fairfax. She says, what about companies such as Harley-Davidson sending production overseas?
Well, they planned to do that over a year ago. They made the announcement. Thailand has tariffs, so they decided to make bikes in Thailand. They just made it up. They had planned to do this a long time ago, and then they just decided to announce it and make believe it was because of this latest business with the tariffs. And it was a very dishonest move on their part, and they were not honest with the consumers. They were not honest with the American people. They're just trying to score some cheap points because probably one of their analysts or managers or MBA bean counter guys has a grudge against President Trump. So, by the way, the news yesterday, the big news is that the European Union wants to drop all tariffs. The Germans want to drop all automobile tariffs. They're charging 25% tariff
29
on American cars coming into Europe.
29.
And we charge a 2.5% tariff on German cars coming into the U.S. Mm-hmm. And President Trump says, hey, that's not right. We're going to do something about it. And so now the Germans want to drop all the tariffs, but unfortunately, they threw themselves into the stew pot called the European Union and the World Trade Organization. So Germany can't do it. They've got to get permission from the peaks in Brussels that run the European Union. And the European Union's got to decide whether they can drop all the tariffs, because the Germans are no longer in control of their own fate. They got so bought into this international sovereignty, international governance structure that Donald Trump is getting us out of, thanks to his America First agenda. And it goes even further. They not only have to get permission from the European Union to do what's in their best interest, what's in Germany's best interest, the Germans have to get permission from the World Trade Organization. So if Germany wants to drop all of its tariffs on American cars, they can't, because they've got to get the World Trade Organization to say, all right, 90%, 95% of all the countries on Earth that make automobiles have to agree to this tariff reduction. So you got to get the Japanese and the South Koreans and the Chinese and everybody else to agree to reduce tariffs before the Germans can do it. That, my friends, is what it means to be part of these international organizations. Decisions are no longer made by your elected representatives in Washington. No, they're made by people whose names you can't pronounce, whose names you don't even know, who you never elected, who happen to sit in places like Geneva and Brussels. Is that what our founders fought for 242 years ago? I don't think so. That's what we fought against, because at that time, the decisions were made in London by the King of England and his ministers. We did not fight and die and bleed to have an independent country to turn it over to an authority in Brussels or Geneva.
Well, you know what's ironic about Harley-Davidson, Curtis Ellis, is 35 years ago, President Reagan took really big steps to protect a U.S. manufacturing company from foreign competitors. You know who that company was at the time? Harley Davidson.
Harley Davidson.
In 1983, Reagan ordered massive tariffs on large Japanese-made motorcycles to help the last surviving maker of U.S.-made motorcycles, Harley Davidson of Milwaukee. Everybody else had gone out of business because of Japanese dumping bikes in the U.S. Harley Davidson was on the brink of bankruptcy, and the president took this courageous action and put in this huge tariff that basically enabled Harley Davidson to then be competitive again and rebuild the company. And now it's going the other way, and they're threatening to move out, right?
Yeah,
if it hadn't been for the tariffs, there wouldn't even be a Harley Davidson, Curtis.
Right.
They wouldn't
That's
exist.
Right.
So
wouldn't even be a Harley Davidson.
There would not be a Harley Davidson.
They wouldn't have a company to lie about if it weren't for President Reagan and the tariffs.
I know.
We wouldn't have a country without tariffs. I mean, that's the first bill passed by the new Congress in 1789. The very first act of Congress was a tariff, right? That's how we raised money to pay for the Coast Guard and pay for national defense and pay for everything that the government did at the time. We taxed foreigners who wanted to sell their goods in America. We taxed them to pay for essential needed services. We did not tax Americans. Americans could come here and work and hire and build and do whatever they did, pay each other, and not pay tax on any of that.
Doesn't make any sense. And look, you know, you're absolutely spot on. I'm out of time. I want to thank Curtis Ellis for joining us for this second exploratory round. Because for us, it's like, look, if you believe in tariffs like Curtis and I do, today's like Christmas. I mean, you can't get better than July 6th. It's a day that's going to go down in history.
Waiting a generation for this.
I know. We've been waiting so long for this, and we're having a lot of fun today. And meantime, jobs are continuing to go up. And the funny thing about it is Wall Street and the traditional Republicans who are all on the take from them. But, you know, you mentioned the think tanks earlier, all right? Who do you think is funding the think tanks? Exactly, right? They're funded by who? Wall Street, gangster banksters, Lower Manhattan, Goldman Sachs that want free trade to get cheap labor to make more money. So they then fund the think tanks that come out with these grand policies about how free trade is good for you, right? So the whole thing is a scam.
It's like, look, just because they slap the free trade label on it and you're supposed to believe it's good, you know, it's like, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. You can put a label on anything. That doesn't mean what's inside the bottle is what it claims to be. And I mean, who pays and who funds the universities? Increasingly, places like Harvard and Princeton and Yale, they're dependent on foreign students. They're dependent on Chinese students who pay a higher tuition rate than Americans. Right. So they're funded by the same Chinese interests, the same foreign interests. So they're bought into this whole globalist, internationalist scheme, one big happy world, and we're all in it together. And, you know, so they're teaching the same nonsense in the schools because that's where their bread is buttered.
All right, we're out of time. Thank you, Curtis Ellis, for being with us. Really appreciate you.